Hey everyone, Christina Simmons with the Catholic Leadership Puzzle here, and today's topic is one of my favorites: time management. Now, for many people, this is like a terrible thing because they don't seem to be able to manage their time really well. And one of the things is many times it's just about practice. But I wanted to really address this because it is especially important when we are in the midst of ministry, because there's always going to be more to do. So it can seem like time just gets away, and then we're going through the next Advent or the next Lent, and we realize, oh my gosh, you know, what's happened. All the time that I had is no longer here, and what am I going to do? So one of the big things I wanted to really address, particularly in the midst of strategic planning and also time management, and then coaching and accompaniment and assessment, because this is all tied together. And how we manage our time is going to be key into whether or not we're able to accomplish the planning that we are doing strategically, and whether or not we're actually going to be able to accompany and coach others and do the assessment. It is about time management again. So I want to share in a particular way two, and a macro and a micro, just like I did for strategic planning. I'm going to kind of give a macro perspective and then a micro one, and then I'm going to give you an exercise to get you going today in being able to manage your time, properly prioritize it, and be able to focus on the things that truly matter. So without further ado, what are the two tools? One is the Pareto principle. This is also known as the 80-20 principle, and this is the reality that when we identify the most significant and impactful tasks and focus on those, then that is going to give you 80% of your results. So the statistic is that 20% of your tasks are what drive 80% of your success. So if you're doing only 20% of your to-do list, you're still going to have 80% success rate. And isn't that something that you want to know about? Okay, so let's dive into this very simply. Most of the time, we have other people driving for us what is important, what tasks are most important, and everybody's kind of shouting at you, especially if you have a boss, if you're not the boss, but all of us have a boss in some ways. So one of the big things is that we need to be focusing upon our 80-20. We need to be focusing on what is the 20% of the tasks that are going to give me the 80% return of results. When you do this, it's going to streamline your work. You're going to be able to delegate those non-essential tasks. You're going to be able to allocate your resources effectively. And that's exactly what we've been talking about with strategic planning, right? Okay, so time management is key here. So one of the things about the Pareto principle is being able to, okay, so how do I go and determine where my 20% is? My 20% of the tasks that are going to help me be able to then achieve 80% of my results. Well, one of the big things is that you need to identify the problems that you are experiencing and identifying the cause of those, and then putting those problems into similar groups or categories, and then being able to assign, for example, the problems a number between 1 and 10 in order to indicate their importance. And then you develop a plan to focus on the top 20% of what you just determined were the most important things that you needed to be doing. So when you do this, you get real clear about what your priorities are, and it's going to increase your daily productivity. And then you're able to also portion your work into manageable segments, and then again, is going to keep you focused. So what is the second tool? So you're keeping in mind this 80-20 principle, that 20% of the tasks that you do are going to give you 80% of your results. So how do you break it down even more? Well, we're going to use the Eisenhower model. Yeah, this is named after General Dwight D. Eisenhower. And what it is that he had 4 categories that he would put work into. And they are the blocks are 1, 2, 3, 4. And 1 is urgent and most important. Second is not urgent, but it's important. And then you have blocks 3 and 4, which are not important, but block 3 are all those interruptions, some calls, some emails, some meetings, people intruding. So it's urgent to them, but it's not important. And then the 4th one is not urgent and not important. So it's busy work, it's some calls, some emails, and things that just literally waste your time. So what we need to do is that we need to go through and we need to categorize the tasks that are on your list and determine, okay, what are the urgent and most important ones, and what are the important but not urgent ones, and then what are the not important, that people think are urgent, and then the not urgent, not important. When you go through your list and you begin to categorize them this way, then what happens is that you get clarity very quickly about what are the tasks that you need to be focused on, so that then you can get the most important work done, that 20%, which is going to give you 80% of your results. Now, a lot of times people will tell me, Christina, I can't just ignore phone calls like from my boss or emails, or I can't just skip meetings. Very true. But if you determine that they are not important to you being able to complete the urgent and not urgent important tasks that you've been assigned, then you're able to, at times, negotiate a way to get out of those things that aren't important and they're interrupting your flow. Sometimes you have to go to a weekly staff meeting, for example, and that might be 2 hours or an hour and a half of it, like, as a time suck. But what you can do is that you can try and leverage it so that it becomes a productive time for you. So how are you participating in that meeting, for example? But you block out that time, and then you look at the other time blocks in order to be able to focus upon that urgent and important work, as well as the not urgent but still important work, things like planning, relationship building. Those are the things that we have to be attentive to, because they're going to give us the most bang for our buck, right? Okay. So these are the 2 things that when we begin to do this, then we get to be very, very efficient. So many people will ask me, Christina, you have so much that's going on. How do you get it done? Well, because I let the stuff that doesn't really matter, I let it go. And for me, how do I let it go? Well, one of the biggest and most important things that I do of every single day is that I begin with prayer, because I'm a person of faith and I know that God is going to help me prioritize that to-do list. He's going to tell me what is most important for my day. And then I'm able to determine, okay, is it urgent important? Is it not urgent, but it's important, so I need to focus on it? Or is it not so important, and I need to set it aside? And so one of the tools that I use, and this is how I want to help you get started right now with being able to get this prioritization and this matrix of important, urgent, and not important, to get that into your mind. And this is a exercise that I got from Unhackable. It's a book by Carrie Oberberner, and it's a great little exercise, and it's called Do, Delegate, or Dump. And what it is that this is an easy and fast way for you to be able to go through your to-do list, all the different tasks that you have, and then you're able to use the Eisenhower matrix, and you're able to go, okay, is this something that I have to do? Or is it something that I can delegate to somebody else if it is important and urgent, or important and not urgent? In other words, I got a little bit of time to respond. So if it's important, is it something I have to do, or is it something that I can delegate someone else to do? So you begin to do that. And then the dump is going to be the ones where it's like, it's not important, but somebody thinks it's urgent. So, for example, someone putting in a request and saying, hey, we need your numbers for X, Y, or Z, and, we need them today. And I don't know how many times, higher headquarters when I was in the military, everybody has a boss. And I don't know how many times it is that somebody goes, oh, I need it today. And that's where that adage of your emergency isn't my emergency. So in other words, your lack of planning, doesn't make it an emergency for me that I have to respond now so that you can hit your deadline because you didn't plan before. So you need to realize, and you can push back and say, hey, I'll get those numbers to you, but I can't get them to you today. I can get them to you by close of business tomorrow. Is that okay? And if it's your boss, hopefully you have a good relationship, and hopefully you'll have been able to kind of pay attention. But sometimes he's being put upon and he's having to respond. But many times we can negotiate those not important but urgent tasks. We can usually negotiate them to someone else, or we can postpone them so that we can focus on the important stuff, or even dump it. Maybe it isn't something that is important. So that's what we're trying to do. So this exercise of do, delegate, and dump is going to help you prioritize your list. It's going to help you get very clear about what is important, what has to be done now, what has to be done, but you have a couple of days or even weeks to do. And then what are the things that aren't important? And what are the things that you are allowing into your schedule that are preventing you from doing that 20% of the work that's going to get you the 80% of the results? So I'm a very practical person, and I'm not, being trying to kind of rag on you about the fact of it is so important for you to understand this one thing. You have charge of your day. You are in charge of your day. You're in charge of how you react. You're in charge of what you do. You're in charge of how you go about your day. Using these time management principles that I just shared with you are going to help you find great joy and peace, because you're going to be applying yourself to the stuff that really matters and is going to really give you satisfaction and also that long-term success that you're looking for. So when you do that, then everybody ends up pretty happy. And many times we find out those things that we put on that dump list, that phone call, that we supposedly thought we'd had to make, or, this, that, or the other, whatever that busy work is, all of a sudden you realize, I don't miss it. And nobody else does either. And we all benefit because we're becoming our best selves, utilize our gifts and talents in the best way possible, in the most efficient and time management possible way. So I hope that this has helped you. I would love to hear how the do, delegate, dump exercise has benefited you, as well as knowledge about the 80-20 principle, the Pareto principle, as well as the Eisenhower matrix. So until next time, God bless.